At this point, we've walked you through a bunch of different things: how to test using color blocks, how to refine your messaging, how to make sure that you have a story that's going to be compelling to your customers or users. What we're going to do today is we're going to walk through an example on how to leverage landing pages on WordPress or on Shopify to do all kinds of things. Now, for this example, we're going to talk more about how to validate a product and make sure that your messaging's resonating, but these can be used for all kinds of different things. And I'll give some examples as we go. Things like what language on a button is going to help drive conversion, how to know that your headline is actually drawing the right attention, and what do people do when they get onto your page. So we're going to walk through a couple different aspects on how to do that using our fictitious electrifying RV example, but I'm going to walk through why that makes sense. And what we're going to try and do is talk about how we're going to use this thing to test and iterate and use paid traffic directly targeting that page and really prove out that there's a great opportunity, and talk about how to test a variety of different things. Everything from the right call to action, how to collect email addresses. We could even do price point testing. And so we'll talk through how to do that. I want to show you some of the key elements that are going to go into the page and how we're going to use that to test, refine, and how that works in conjunction with Google Analytics or any kind of tracking that you're using. In a previous video, we talked about the differences between landing pages and home pages. And just to give you a quick idea, this is our totally made up example, but this is our home page, right? So it has our logo, it has some navigation at the top, it talks about getting started, and you could see some of the language. Now, this is an absolutely made up site. I didn't spend a ton of time on it. So you can see it's filled with lorem ipsum, but the idea is that I'm actually pulling some of my biggest headlines. And if you're not familiar with our headline testing and the process that we did with that, we'll throw a link in below so you can check that out. But these are the headlines that we already know are working with our audience. We're reusing some of the content that we've created and tested to show that we're really listening to what our users are saying, and we're adding that content back into this page. Now, this is my homepage, so it's far more robust. It has tons of content in it. It talks about all of the different features. It has some social proof. It has testimonials. It has everything that you could possibly want, as well as some calls to action to try and make sure things are moving. Now, I'm going to jump over to the landing page and talk about some of the differences. The very first thing you'll see is that I've changed the header. So now we've simplified it down to a specific call to action. This is honestly, it's a great practice when you're building out a landing page so that all of your calls to actions are very specific and ideally tightly related to whatever messaging that you're trying to build. So if you think about it like, I'm trying to build congruency and consistency between the promise that I've told my customer I'm going to deliver and the page they land on. Now, it doesn't have to be an exact match, but the idea is that whatever story I'm using to draw that first call to action for the ad, for the paid traffic, which I've already targeted to my specific audience, what I want to do is make sure that whatever they click on, they land here, and this delivers on that promise, or at least gives a strong indication of how to do it. We're following a similar structure here to storytelling. This is the problem I'm going to solve for you. Here's some how I'm going to do it sections. Here's some validation and social proof. And I have a summary that basically says, hey, this is why you should do it. You should take action right now. As you can tell, I've spent a ton of time on this, and I forgot to even change this last button to something other than I am a button. However, what I want to talk about here is that on a landing page, we're building that consistency. So if I jump over to what some of my best color blocks were, let's say it's make parking your trailer the easiest part of your trip, make towing your RV simple and greener, and turn your current RV into a smart battery that parks itself. Let's say those were my top performing headlines. Now, I'm going to use those on my homepage, which is generic, and it's going to try and speak to all of these problems. But when it comes to a landing page, I'm going to try and take one of these. So we used make parking your trailer the easiest part of your trip and turn that into the core focus. So when I go over to my landing page, now in this case, I've literally just reiterated it, but I'm going to give you a little bit more explanation as to how it's going to do it. I'm going to pull in some of my other pain points, but I'm really focusing on making sure that I've summarized this with no more backup troubles. Again, I'm reiterating the pain that the user has identified because they've clicked that ad. So it's going to vary a lot, whether you're doing B2B or if you're doing direct to consumer, but the idea is the same. Maintain that consistency with landing pages. And the real thing that we're trying to do here is figure out what works better than anything else. Now, I can also duplicate this page. I can create several ads going to several different landing pages. And I'm going to check for things like, what do people do? How do they interact? Google Analytics is already great, and it will tell you a whole bunch of information about whether or not they bounced. For example, bounce rate will tell you if people landed on the page, did they interact at all, or did they just land and leave? If they land and left, it's either that your page is loading too slow, so they don't want to engage, or whatever story you're telling them doesn't make sense. This first headline can be a huge impact on whether or not people engage with more of the content or not. So creating the exact same page and just changing this headline, driving the same traffic to it, could improve how much people interact with your page. We'll never know until we test, but we'll never know if we're not collecting the right data. There's a ton of things that we can also do on this page. So what kind of language do I put in here for this button? If you don't know how to do this already, we have another tutorial on how to set up Google tags, and we can collect all kinds of information about the text on the button. When they clicked it, did they click this one or the top one? Have they clicked something else lower? There's a whole bunch of information we can do. You can also do things like use landing pages to create different image tests. We can talk about the benefits. We can also change the calls to action. So in this case, it's a direct purchase, click the button, buy the product, but we could try different things, especially if it's a high ticket item. We could talk about maybe not trying to sell them directly, but giving them an opportunity to learn more, to download some content, to use a calculator to see if it would work for their specific set of circumstances. There's a lot of different things we could do. We can also test pricing. Now, sometimes it's harder to test pricing if your price points are already well known, but you can always artificially increase your pricing on your homepage and then play with the landing pages, driving specific targeted traffic and measuring how many people click and engage. One of my favorite things to do is start testing this stuff before I've even launched a product. I could throw a price, I can test it, I can see how many people show an intent to purchase, which is basically, did they click the add to cart button? Now, standard web metrics would say for every person who clicked the add to cart button, we're expecting maybe 25% of those to go through with a purchase. So if I put a price on here and I can measure how many people add to cart, even if it all goes to the same page, or even if it goes to another page that says we're currently out of stock, I still have a strong indication of what that's going to look like long-term. So now just jumping into the builder, I want to just talk about a couple quick little things. So first of all, I'm going to be using Bricks Builder on WordPress for most of this, but I will talk about Shopify in a few minutes. There's a couple things that are considered best practices with landing pages, and it's very much about controlling the experience. So for example, I have this header that shows up on this page, and I'm going to walk you through how we do that with Bricks on WordPress. I've also no indexed this page. Now, all that really means is that it's going to say that, hey, web browsers, don't look this page up. Don't add it to your search results. So it just allows us to have complete control over all of the traffic who's going to this page, and we'll know everything about them because the only way to get here will be through paid advertisements. To do that in Bricks Builder, it's quite easy. I can go to my page settings, I can go to SEO, and just down here where it says Meta Robots, it starts off as default, and I'm just going to go here and select no index and save that. And what that means is it's just going to prevent any other search engines from scraping this page. The other thing I'm going to do is show you how I changed this header. You can see I have a main header. Now, this is the one that I'm using on most of the site, and I have a landing header. So within my main header, when I go look at how this is set up, under my settings and template settings, there's conditions. I've set a condition so that this one, because it's my primary one, is on the entire website. And then I've said, hey, I want to exclude one specific page. Now, you could do this through category and class, but depending on how far along you are, you might just want to do it on one individual page. So I've just excluded it from that one page. And now when I jump over to my landing page header, I'm still going to go up to settings. I'm going to look at my template settings and conditions. And all I have is I have this set so that it only shows on one individual page, which is my landing page. So that's how I've created that distinction. I can now do this so that it works on one specific page. So now I could even change the call to action button. So I could have a different call to action on every single landing page if I really wanted to, or I could have it the same across all of my landing pages. And honestly, that's it. I have everything set up. I've told a bit of a story. It says, this is the problem I solve, how I'm going to solve it. Here's reasons to validate or proof or social proof that this is a real product and you can engage. and I've summarized it with a quick call to action at the end. Now jumping over to Shopify. Obviously, you could tell I've spent even less time on this page because the core content would be effectively the same. I'm still going to build something out in the Shopify page builder. It doesn't really matter which template you're using, but I'm going to follow the same kind of logic of here's a problem I'm solving, here's some information, here's some social proof or some validation that, this is a very real product, and a final summary and call to action at the end. So you could build it out in any platform you want. So the one thing with Shopify is that you can change this header. Now, depending on your theme, sometimes it's custom coding, sometimes it's a default availability within that theme. For the theme that I'm using, which is just a cheap, free, standard theme, it would require some custom development. It's not that hard, and honestly, if you use any of the AI tools, you can ask it to write some code for you. It'll show you where to put it and everything else. For the sake of this, I'm not going to do any custom development for this, but I am going to show you how to no-index this page. Okay, so I've left the editor and I've come back into my online store theme, and now I'm just going to click this 3 dot and I'm going to press edit code. Now for this one, I've already built out all the pieces I need, but I'm going to show you how I did it so that I can walk you through the example and you can go and do it again. I'm also going to put the snippet of code and maybe some other resources within the blog post that's associated with this. The links will be in the description below. So when I go over to templates, I'm just going to hit add new template. Because I've already added it, it no longer shows up. But one of the things is that when you click templates, you can go in here and eventually it will say no robots text. So I'm going to click that and it will go and add a default file. So that file is this one right here. Now, this piece here, this shows up dynamically. As soon as you create the file, this shows up. The thing with Shopify is it will dynamically create a sitemap for you as you change your page, so you don't have to continue to edit it. What we're going to do though is just add a small bit of code. So I've just put in disavow, colon, and then this is the slug of the page that I don't want to have indexed. Now, there's a ton of other ways of doing that, and we could set some rules, but for simplicity, I'm going to recommend you just use this. Disallow, and then your slug. So you'll have to edit this so that this is whatever your page is called. And when I say slug on this one, I would actually include the /pages/landing page -1. So I'm just going to copy that one from here, come over here and replace this like that. And now it just basically says, don't include this page. I'm going to hit save, and now I'm all set. So now we've effectively no-indexed our landing page on Shopify as well. Once you have those landing pages up, it's time to start testing. So the next lesson, we're going to walk through how to set up a test. We're going to drive very specific targeted traffic. For this, we're going to be focusing a little bit on Meta so that we can continue on that path. And we'll show you a couple things with Google as well to make sure that we're driving the right traffic, and we can use this information to test and verify that what we're doing is working. And then soon after, we're going to walk you through how to interpret those results, some things you can change, what you can make better, and how to improve this so that it is a fully functional site. And you can take the information you've learned, apply it back to your homepage, and make it so that your entire site is a high converting machine. If you're selling high ticket items, or you're doing B2B SaaS that requires more of a longer term agreement, check out our links to see a little bit about how we do downloadable content, the theory that we apply, and how we can turn that downloadable content into your new sales list.